Now, it seems like the people who know Scott Morrison the best trust him the least.
After copying a character assessment this week that described him as a horrible person, a fraud and a complete psycho, a leaked text exchange from the PM's number 2 guy, Barnaby Joyce, this weekend added hypocrite, untrustworthy and liar to the mix. Cue grovelling apology.
I rang the Prime Minister immediately. I apologised. He accepted my apology. I offered my resignation, and he did not accept my resignation.
I'm sorry.
The Nationals leader insisting he's changed his mind about the PM since the text was sent in March last year.
My view from the backbench about the Prime Minister was based on assumption and commentary, not from a one-on-one working relationship.
Hang on a second here. That was after Barnaby Joyce had served in the Cabinet for over half a decade alongside Scott Morrison. The idea that this was just a flippant remark is simply untenable.
Cue a Sunday squad of senior libs in damage control mode.
It wasn't Barnaby's finest hour by a long stretch, but he apologised. The Prime Minister accepted that apology.
Barnaby was in a pretty dark place, blaming a lot of people for putting him on the backbench at the time.
Conspicuously absent, any of Barnaby's party mates. Conspicuously present, the PM, stumping up for cameras right after church.
What people send around in texts, I frankly could not care less about. Politics is a brutal business. People get angry, people get bitter. Of course they do. That's all of us.
The leaks have all but assured a fiery sitting week when Parliament kicks off on Tuesday.
He hasn't listened to advice on vaccines, on rapid tests, on aged care responses. And when things go wrong, he always tries to blame someone else.
So just months out from an election, are the PM and his deputy fast becoming the government's biggest liabilities? And if so, how safe is Barnaby's job?
Well, National Party Deputy Leader David Littleproud can now count himself among the conspicuously present today, and he joins us now. David, Barnaby says he offered his resignation to the Prime Minister, but let's face it, that is kind of farcical. It's your party that decides who the Deputy PM is. If he really meant it, shouldn't he be offering that same resignation to the Nats party room meeting tomorrow?
Oh, look, I think we're getting caught up in the titillations of Canberra. These are just sideshows that really no one out there is really interested in. And to be candid, we're not interested in. We're actually just getting on with the job. And I think this has been blown up out of proportion. Barnaby, yes, wrote a text before he became Deputy Prime Minister at a stage of his career where obviously he was in a darker place than he is now. But I can tell you from my observations of him working with the Prime Minister, they are very close. And in fact, some Nats would say they're probably too close. We like to have a transactional relationship. But the Deputy Prime Minister tomorrow will talk to our party room, and our party room will obviously have an honest conversation about what's happened, but mostly looking to the future. That's what we're focused on, more so than ourselves.
With respect, David, I know you're trying to dismiss all of this, but these leaks are coming from within your own coalition ranks. It's not coming from the opposition. It's not coming from the public. And I know you're saying no one's listening, but there has been a lot said about this Prime Minister. Barnaby had known the PM a long time when he sent that text describing him pretty unfavourably. The French president has said that he thinks he's a liar. Julia Banks has said she thinks he's a bully. We know what Malcolm Turnbull thinks of Scott Morrison. Do you trust Morrison?
Yes, totally. And in fact, I don't always agree with him. And in fact, we've had some pretty good Barneys over the years. But he's always looked me square in the eye. He's told me from his perspective the truth. He's never lied to me, and I can quite categorically say that. And look,
yeah, but hold on. I mean, you've lived through politics for a while. We've all seen plenty of Prime Ministers. No one was really... none of John Howard's colleagues were describing him in these terms regularly. Foreign presidents weren't describing him that way. We don't tend to call our national leaders liars, but it seems people in your party, in your coalition, think this PM is a liar.
I think it's no revelation that in politics, not everyone gets on. I mean, we've seen that for many years in partnerships that still have been able to achieve outcomes, like Hawke and Keating. They weren't sinking stubbies every Friday night together. They didn't get on, but they did some really good things for Australia. Howard and Costello did the same. No one's going to be sitting here singing Kumbaya together. The reality is, but we work together to get outcomes. What's important to the Australian people is the outcomes, not the titillations of he said, she said.
Hold on, David. The outcomes are that we don't have enough rat tests in this country. country. Omicron has let rip over the summer. There's a crisis in aged care and the relevant ministers going to the cricket. Those are the outcomes. I'm happy to talk about them. How do you defend that record?
Well, we take our fair share of what's happened during this pandemic. There was no playbook for this. And what we've tried to do is make sure that we've worked with the states. They haven't always come with us on every decision, but we've worked as best we can. And when we talk about outcomes, let me compare us to the rest of the world. We're one of the highest vaccinated countries in the world. Our economy is the darling of the world. We actually will have more people in employment after this COVID pandemic than what we did before. Those are the real outcomes that we've been able to deliver. Yes, we haven't got everything right. Don't pretend to. This thing has thrown curveballs left, right and centre, and we've tried to bat as many away as we can. But if you look at it at a macro level, this country is going damn well compared to the rest of the world.
David, Barnaby Joyce sent that text to Brittany Higgins expressing solidarity at her situation at a time when the PM was still insisting he only learnt of Brittany Higgins' alleged rape at the time the story broke. The government is now spinning this, as are you, with Barnaby Joyce being in a dark place at that time. What message do you think that sends to survivors of sexual assault, that politicians can only have sympathy for those victims when they're in a dark place?
Well, I reject that. We actually do take domestic violence and sexual assault very seriously. And in fact, we've put many millions of dollars of Australian taxpayer money to address this. It's abhorrent part of our society that has to be weeded out. And to think that the Prime Minister's, and I don't even know what's happening 50 metres from my door in this building here. So the reality was he didn't know what happened until such time as it became more public. And you know, not every Prime Minister doesn't know everything and is not told everything. And I think it's a little unreasonable to think he would. And so, look, the reality is we take this very seriously. And that's the sort of stuff that not just governments need to fix, but we need to fix as a society. We've got to be better than that, and we've all got a role to play in it, not just governments.
But, David, the question remains, why would Barnaby Joyce choose that particular moment to describe the Prime Minister as a liar to Brittany Higgins?
Well, to a third party, but I grant you it was to
but it was a
Brittany
message
Higgins,
that was meant to be passed to Brittany.
Yeah. And Barnaby was trying to assist Brittany in terms of making sure that one of the inquiries, the information, would be shared with that inquiry, and he did a good job. Barnaby
by calling
actually stood
Scott Morrison a liar.
Well, again, and the actions of Barnaby and what he said are not defensible. So Barnaby has made it clear that at that point he wasn't in a great space, but as he sits today and the observations I can make, I can honestly say these two do get on and they work well together.
All right, David Littleproud, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.